Hey, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory that's due to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders, great millstone, who all learned this truth from a new well. Peace and salutations to the 144,000, the rest of the 1/3, the large multitude. Until y'all say shalom. Coming to you back with another lesson through the Spirit. Now I'm entitled this one, Our People Have Been in America for Too Long. And our people, the nation of Israel, mainly comprising of the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans here in America, which is Babylon the Great. But also you do have Israelite foreigners, which ultimately we're all Israelite foreigners because we're not in the land, but you have the speckled bird. They may look like these other heathen nations. They may look like a so-called Chinese, so-called East Indian, so-called white man. But ultimately, their lineage goes back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because the nation of Israel has mingled themselves into these other nations that may not look like the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. But chiefly, the Israelites do consist of the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. And where are the bulk of the 12 tribes are here in America. Just like back in the time of Egypt, you had the 12 tribes, in captivity under the Egyptians, the Hamites, Pharaoh. We're in that same condition today here in America. Today, the modern day Pharaoh would be the president, Donald Trump. Today will be the Pharaoh of today, because we are in spiritual Egypt. We're in spiritual Assyria, spiritual Sodom and Gomorrah, because America is basically a combination, a mixture of all these different empires, all the Egyptian empire, the Neo-Babylonian empire, the Assyrian empire, the Greeks, the Romans. It's all mixing into one. And just like in a time of all these ancient empires that Jake has been taken captives into, our people are in that same spirit. They don't want to leave America because they've gotten so used to the ways of Babylon the Great, the ways of America, the American dream. You go to work, you work your 9 to 5. If you work hard enough, you get the house. The definition of the American dream. Let me get the Google definition for that. And it says, AI overview in Google, the American dream is a set of ideals centered on the belief that in the United States, freedom includes the opportunity for individuals to achieve prosperity and success through hard work and determination, regardless of their background. And it says it's a national ethos emphasizing social mobility, equality, and the pursuit of a better life. While traditionally associated with material wealth, the concept also encompasses personal fulfillment, self-improvement, and contributing to society. So that's the definition for the American dream. The majority of our people have fallen for that American dream, especially the rest of the tribes, who aren't native to the United States. The Northern Kingdom, the so-called Mexicans, the tribe of Issachar, and all these different Latino-speaking tribes that came over here to America to so-called make a better life for themselves. And also, the Haitians, which are the tribe of Levi, the so-called Jamaicans and all the Benjamites that have been scattered throughout the West Indies, all the different islands, they came over here to make an American a better life for themselves here in America. because Esau Edom, he pushed that American dream through all these different movies and different shows and media and books to make people come to America. And yeah, you do have these other heathen nations that do come over here and make make a living, especially these so-called Chinese and these so-called Indians, so-called Arabs. They come over here and establish all these different businesses in Jake's neighborhood. But really, Jake, for the most part, isn't designed to really prosper in his land, because this is the land of our captivity. We're not here to so-called make millions and billions and build a generational wealth and leave it down to our great grandchildren, because we know that this place is going to be destroyed. But majority of Jake don't have that mindset, because they've been conditioned to believe that America is going to continue on forever. They have Stockholm Syndrome. A lot of our people have Stockholm Syndrome. Now I'm going to get the definition for Stockholm Syndrome. It says, the AI overview, Stockholm Syndrome is a psychological coping mechanism that can develop in victims of captivity or abuse, causing them to identify with and develop positive feelings towards their captors. And who are our captors today would be the so-called white people, which are the Edomites, the descendants of Esau, the adversary of the nation of Israel, who are completely opposite to the Israelites. That's why we're in the condition we're in, ultimately because we sinned against Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, and he let Esau Edom, the white man, kick our ass. He let him put us in chains, back in the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s. Yeah, you had Jake in chains, and that yoke of iron. But now that Esau Edom so-called free Jake, now Jake has that mindset that we're free. That the white man allowed us to have jobs and get houses and go to college. But ultimately, it's all the same thing, because ultimately we're still in slavery. We're still in captivity. But yet Jake don't understand that. Jake doesn't want to leave America. They want to stay here pretty much for as long as they can. But we know that just like all these different empires fell, America's going to fall the same way. But yet majority of Jake doesn't want to leave America. But ultimately, Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai is going to destroy America, and whoever wants to be left here, then they're going to be left here to suffer that second death, that lake of fire, the ICBMs, the intercontinental ballistic missiles. Jake is in that same spirit that they've always been in, not wanting to leave the land of their captivity. These are a couple examples. This is Exodus chapter 16, verse 1. And they took their journey from Elim, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came unto the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month, after the departing out of the land of Egypt. Verse 2, and the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And that's Jake today. Just like in the time of the wilderness, in the time of the Exodus, Jake was talking shit, against the men that Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai set up. And it's the same thing today. Here we're telling our people to arise and depart from this place spiritually, mentally, and maybe even physically. Some things you could cut off that you're so used to doing here in America, and then let go of certain things, because very soon we're going to have to be pilgrims upon the earth, and the elect already in that mindset of leaving this Babylonian life, this American way of lifestyle, having everything at the click of a button. Everything's, convenience, instant gratification. That's all America teaches you, and that's going to be the downfall of 2/3 of our people, of wicked Jake, that refuses to turn back to Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, because all these dainties, all these conveniences, comforts that Jake is used to, They're gonna be taken away very soon when this system, the US dollar, collapses, when physical cash can no longer be used. This devil is gonna come with that solution, and our people are gonna want those comforts back. They're gonna want all those different dainties that they've gotten used to over the years, but it's gonna lead to their downfall. Verse 3, and the children of Israel said unto them, would to the Most High we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full. For ye have brought us forth into the wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. And that's the spirit of Jake. Here, we're giving you the, spiritual bread, the true bread. Like Yahushua said, man shall not live by bread alone. And I'm going to get that real quick. This is Matthew chapter 4 and verse 4. Or I'm going to start at the top. Matthew chapter 4 and verse 1. Then was Yahushua led up of the spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. Verse 2. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was afterward and hungered. Verse 3. And when the tempter came to him, he said, if thou be the son of Yahweh, command that these stones be made bread. Verse 4, but he answered and said, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of the Most High. And that's what our people don't get. They think that this is as good as it gets, America, all these different dainties that Jake is getting used to. But yet, when all this food gets taken away, and they have no food, they're not going to have that comfort. They're not going to have the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding that Yahweh Bashim Yahushai has given unto his elect. The rest of these Jakes out here, they're going to be starving, not just for physical bread, but also for the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. But they're not going to find it, because when the prophets were out there telling Jake to repent and to get right, they chose instead to trust in America, trust in the system, because the dainties, all the different comforts that it has to offer. And when that MOTB gets made mandatory, a lot of them are going to take it because this is all they know. This is Numbers chapter 11 and verse 1. And when the people complained, it displeased the Lord, and the Lord heard it, and his anger was kindled, and the fire of the Lord burned among them, and consumed them that were in the uttermost parts of the camp. Verse 2, and the people cried unto Moses, and when Moses prayed unto the Lord, the fire was quenched. Verse 3, and he called the name of the place Taberah, because the fire of the Lord burned among them. Verse 4, and the mixed multitude that was among them fell a lusting, and the children of Israel also wept again and said, who shall give us flesh to eat? Verse 5, we remember the fish which we did eat in Egypt freely, the cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic. Verse 6, but now our soul is dried away. There is nothing at all beside this manna before our eyes. So yet here, Jake is freed from captivity, from slavery, under the Egyptians, under Pharaoh. And ultimately Yahweh Bashim Yahushai provided manna for Jake to eat. And like it says in the Apocrypha, every different person, that manna tasted different to them. It tasted according to the taste, whatever taste they liked. It would taste just like that. But yet Jake was crying. They wanted quail. They wanted, chicken, chicken eating niggas. And Jake wasn't content with the manna. And Jake is in that same spirit today. You're You have the spiritual manna being given out freely, but Jake don't want that. Jake wants McDonald's and all these different false doctrines that Jake wants to hear, because they don't want to hear that America is going to be destroyed and that this place is going to be collapsed, that all their prized possessions are going to be taken away very soon when Esau Edom crashes the system. So yeah, Jake is in that same spirit today. They don't want to leave America. They don't want to leave all the different dainties that they got them used to, all the different fast foods and Jake is used to eating. But when all hell breaks loose and all these different things aren't available to eat, they're going to be crying out for that spiritual manna. They're going to be crying out for their knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, but they're not going to find it. Because when it was time to get right, they were murmuring, they were talking shit to the prophets of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai that he set up. This is Numbers chapter 14 and verse 1. And all the congregation lifted up their voice and cried, and the people wept that night. Verse 2. And all the children of Israel murmured against Moses and against Aaron, and the whole congregation said unto them, what the Most High that we had died in the land of Egypt, or what the Most High we had died in this wilderness. Verse 3, and wherefore hath the Lord brought us into this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and children should be prey? Were it not better for us to return into Egypt? Verse 4, and they said one to another, let us make a captain and let us return into Egypt. Here Jake got freed from captivity, freed from slavery, and yet they still want to go back. They still wanted to go back to Egypt and go back to all those different comforts. Yeah, Jake was getting slaved away, just like today in America. That's the parallel, the similarities between Egypt and America is that, you over here, you work 60, 70 hours, but you're going to get fed good. You'll be able to go to the grocery store, get you, whatever chicken, steak, whatever, you want to eat. And Jake is in that same spirit today. They don't want to leave the grocery stores and the Whole Foods and the Costco's and all these different foods that Jake is used to eating. And then you got Jake eating GMO foods. You got here Jake, they rather stay here and keep eating fast food and Popeyes and Chick-fil-A and McDonald's and Burger King, when the kingdom of heaven is being offered to Jake. The whole nation of Israel is going to be in the kingdom, but ultimately you want to get in the kingdom in the first go around, not to suffer that second death and have to learn the hard way by pain after death. But ultimately, that's how Jake is going to have to learn to not want to stay here in America, because there's going to be an example of those who wanted to stay here in America, the 2/3. They're going to have to suffer that lake of fire for wanting to stay here, for trusting in the system, for taking the MOTB just to continue to participate in this wicked ass society. This is Jeremiah chapter 44 and verse 15. Then all the men which knew that their wives had burnt incense unto other gods, and all the women that stood by, a great multitude, even all the people that dwelt in the land of Egypt and Pathros, answered Jeremiah, saying, verse 16, as for the word that thou hast spoken unto us in the name of the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, we will not hearken unto thee. And Jake is in that same spirit. They don't want to hearken unto the message of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai being spoken by his prophets. They want to take heed to their own understanding. Take heed to these other false prophets and these Christians, church pastors telling them that, that everything's going to be okay. They go get you a bag because we're going to be in America forever. That prosperity doctrine. Verse 17, but we certainly do whatsoever thing going forth out of our own mouth, to burn incense unto the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, as we have done, we and our fathers, our kings and our princes, in the cities of Judah, and in the streets of Jerusalem, for then had we plenty of victuals, and were well, and saw no evil. So Jake is in that same spirit today, especially these Christians, these other Israelite camps that are teaching false doctrine, that aren't really pushing Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, filling their own belly. And ultimately, they're in that spirit because Yahweh Bashim Yahushai hasn't judged them yet. Yeah, he's exposing some of these other Israelite camp leaders teaching false doctrine, but they're like, oh shit, I haven't got put to death. Nothing bad has happened to me. But Yahweh Bashim Yahushai is reserving these wicked ass Jakes that are just looking to fill their own belly on this side, trying to get their consolation on this side. And they're going to get it. They're going to get their, a lot of them have gotten their consolation. They sold out. They got the 501c3, the pushing these false names, pushing Jesus Christ, and all these false names that, Yahweh Bashim Yahushai told us not to teach. But yet they're doing just like their fathers did. And ultimately it's them coming back in a reincarnation, because they are their fathers, all these wicked ass Jakes following after these other gods, following after their own belly. Verse 18, but since we left off to burn incense to the Queen of Heaven and to pour out drink offerings unto her, we have wanted all things and have been consumed by the sword and by the famine. And ultimately, once you leave all these different philosophies, you leave the ways of America, ultimately that's the sacrifice. You making your body a living sacrifice. And Jake don't want to do that, because if you come back and repent to Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, you're going to have to put off certain things. You're going to have to lose your life to gain it on the other side. But Jake don't want to do that. They don't want to leave America behind. They don't want to leave their the 9-to-5s, or they don't want to leave that job that's making them a lot of money, or stop doing something that goes against their morals, because and then they would stop getting the bag. They would stop feeling all these different comforts that America has to offer. And Jake don't want to do that. They want to stay in America. They want to continue to fulfill after the lust of the flesh, and they love the convenience and the dainties of Babylon the Great America. So ultimately Jake don't want to leave all these different gods and idols and Jesus Christ and Christianity and Buddha and Islam, because it feels good to the flesh. And Jake has always been in that same spirit, not wanting to leave their captivity, spiritually, mentally, physically. Get this last example. This is Ezra chapter 1 and verse 3. Who is there among you, all of his people? His power be with him, and let him go up to Jerusalem, which is in Judah, and build a house of the Lord Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, power of Israel. He is the Most High, which is in Jerusalem. Verse 4, and whosoever remaineth in any place where he sojourned, let the man of his place help him with silver and with gold and with goods and with beasts, beside the free will offering for the house of the Most High that is in Jerusalem. And this is ultimately going back into the time of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. When Cyrus, he allowed the southern kingdom to go back to Jerusalem. But majority of Jake, they didn't want to leave that captivity, because Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, they told Jake, he told Jake to get comfortable, because you're going to be in this captivity, for some time. So, and let me get that account. This is Jeremiah chapter 29 and verse 4. It says, thus saith the Lord Yahweh Bashim Yahushai of hosts, the power of Israel, unto all that are carried away captives, whom I have caused to be carried away from Jerusalem unto Babylon. Verse 5, build ye houses, and dwell in them, and plant gardens, and eat the fruit of them. Verse 6, take you wives and beget sons and daughters, and take wives for your sons, and give your daughters to husbands, that they may bear sons and daughters, that ye may be increased there and not diminished. Verse 7, and seek the peace of the city, wherever I have caused you to be carried away captives, and pray unto the Lord Yahweh Bashim Yahshai for it, for in the peace thereof shall ye have peace. And yeah, Yahweh Bashim Yahshai told Jake, the southern kingdom, in the time of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, get comfortable, because you're going to be there for some time. And ultimately, Jake is in that same spirit today. They've gotten comfortable. They established themselves here, built businesses, enjoying the ways of Babylon the Great in America. But ultimately, all this is going to be done away with very soon. And Yahweh Bashim Yahshai already has told us that, depart, arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest, like it says in Micah chapter 2 and verse 10. But yet, Jake has made America, Babylon the Great, his rest, and he doesn't want to leave. He wants to stay here, but this is that captivity where you're not going to be allowed to stay here, because this place is going to be utterly destroyed. But majority of Jake, they don't know that, because Jake, they built, they built lives here. They, built families, businesses, but very soon this place is going to be destroyed. And just back here in Ezra chapter 1 and verse 3, only the remnant, went back to the land and helped build up the temple. And that's what the elect are doing today. They're the house of David, the tabernacle of David is being rebuilt, through the elect, the remnant, starting with the 144,000 and that large multitude. But the rest of our people, the 2/3, they're going to stay here in America, because they don't want to leave this place. They don't want to detach from it spiritually. They don't want to detach from it physically, mentally. And if that's what they want, then shit, Yahweh Bashim Yahshai is going to leave them here, but they're going to be burnt up. But the elect of Yahweh Bashim Yahshai, that 1/3, they're going to get delivered for leaving America behind. Just like in that movie, in that Netflix movie, Leave the World Behind. That's what the elect are doing. But that's pretty much the point. Praise is edifying to the elect. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from well. Peace and salutations to the 144,000 and the rest of the 1/3.